Today on the Bar Business Podcast, discover the CYA file cabinet, the 5 document categories that keep you out of lawsuits and help you with insurance claims. Master the documentation checklist you can use when something goes wrong, and learn a simple digital plus physical filing system that you can use to save all your records and easily produce them when you need to. Hello and welcome to the Bar Business Podcast, where we help bar owners increase profits, attract loyal guests, and simplify operations so you can avoid burnout and finally enjoy your life outside of your bar. I'm your host, Chris Schneider, the Bar Business Coach. So today on the podcast, we're diving into something that, quite frankly, isn't very fun, but we're going to talk about documentation. What paper do you need? How do you organize those documents to protect yourself, whether we're talking about lawsuit potentials, employee issues, anything that goes wrong in your bar needs to be documented so that you can remember it. And the thing is that this is, like I said, it's probably the least fun thing in the bar business. It's something no one wants to do. And quite frankly, most bar owners don't, because it just kind of is boring and sucks. But it's also very important, because when things go wrong, you need to know why they went wrong, how they went wrong. And if something comes from the fact that something went wrong, say you had somebody slip and fall in your restaurant and they end up suing you, you want the documentation to say, hey, here's exactly what happened. So first thing I want to talk about through today is, what are the 5 document categories that we really need to make sure that we're keeping on hand and that we have forms for, reports for, standardized ways of documenting these 5 areas? And we also need to make sure that our managers, whomever is doing these different pieces of documentation, is really well trained on how to fill them out so that we get a consistently filled out report that is going to be accurate and is going to help, again, cover our ass in the case that something goes bad. So let's go through these 5 document categories that I think are absolutely essential for you to have. The first one is incident reports. And for these, generally, I would say make up a standard 1-page form, but this is going to be for all your slip and falls, any bad spills, anything where there's property damage involved, any fights you have on premises, anyone that injures themselves. And really, you should use these anytime you have a refusal of service event or you kick anyone out of your bar. And what we want to do on an incident report is capture essentially who, what, when, where. So who, what, when, and where did this happen? And then we want to record any witnesses. We want to put with that any photos. And we want to write down any corrective actions that happened, right? So if someone slipped and fell, a corrective action that could happen was you called an ambulance because they broke their ankle. Or it appeared as if they had injured their ankle. And so you called an ambulance. Now, in those reports, the main thing we're trying to capture here is just a solid idea of what happened. Because we all know people's memory is bad. And if you have someone, say, slip and fall in your restaurant, and in most states, they have up to 2 years to file a lawsuit about a slip and fall. So, that's to file. Then by the time you get to a deposition, it could easily be another year on that. So if you think that you can perfectly remember what happened 3 years ago when someone fell down in your bar, great, you don't need a report. But I know, and you can't. The other thing that's very true in this industry is that, okay, if I'm talking about an incident that happened 3 years ago, maybe I don't have a single one of the employees that were there that night still working for me. Maybe I know where they are, maybe I don't. So we want to get all this recorded at the time of an incident, because a lot of times in the legal system, things are going to happen way down the road. Now, the second type of documents that you should always have on hand is training logs. Who trained who on what? That's the basics of it. Who trained who on what? Now, for things like liquor licenses, server liquor licenses, or if you're in a state that has a specific training for serving alcohol where you have to maintain that certificate, that should also go in these training logs. But basically, you want to make sure that you have a log that someone was trained on a task, they know how to do the task, and that you have something signed off by the trainer and hopefully the trainee to say, yes, this person actually knows how to do this activity. And the reason we want to do that is if we ever have an unemployment issue, a work lawsuit, this is going to show, hey, this was within their standard work, and they were trained to do it. So we want to keep training logs up to date and signed in our records. We want maintenance and safety records. So when I say maintenance, I'm talking about everything from Equipment service logs, right? Hood cleanings. A lot of times you're required to have a sticker on the outside of the hood so that the state can see that. That's in state health code. But I would say keep service logs on every piece of equipment you have and when it gets serviced. Write down when you purchased it, who you purchased it from. That can help you predict life left in your equipment so that when you have extra money, you know which equipment to replace. What do I need to upgrade based just upon longevity of this piece of equipment? B, it helps you know always what's happened with that equipment. So if it breaks down the road, you can say, oh, I know a year ago it had this problem, 2 years ago we had that problem, and here's how it got fixed. And along those lines, one of the reasons why we want to document all this information is because a lot of times who we have working on our equipment changes. So if we can give them the complete history of what happened with that piece of equipment, they can be more effective at fixing the current issues for us. Fourth thing I would want you to make sure that you're maintaining is all your vendor agreements. Vendor agreements are definitely not a sexy thing, but that's where we're going to find all our contracts, our pricing, our credit terms, any sort of weird things in contracts that a supplier put in there where they can change prices on you down the road. That should all be in the contract. And unfortunately, sometimes suppliers change their deal, even if their contract says they can't. So you want to make sure you have all those vendor agreements stored, ready to go, so that you can grab those and negotiate with them if you have a supplier that steps out of line of the agreement. Or if you forget, like, hey, are my terms on this? I always pay, when they drop off my food, but yeah, I don't want to do that this week. Are my terms 7 days or 14 days? That's another good reason to have that contract. And the fifth piece of material that I think you should keep, and this is kind of like the training logs, but different, it is employee acknowledgement. So your signed handbook receipts, your signed job descriptions, any tip policy, cash handling policies, incident policies, any policies that you're having your employees trained on and you're having them sign off on it. Every team member should have a folder, an employee file, and all those sign-offs should be in there so that you can refer to them. And so that when they violate a policy and they go, well, I didn't know I had to do that, you can just be like, look, dude, here's where you signed this document on this day, and it says you did. So the whole purpose to keeping all these documents is improving our legal defensibility. And if you ever get audited, if you ever have a government issue or a legal issue, it's going to now be real easy to get the information you need because you've documented everything ahead of time. Now, really quickly, because I don't want to keep you guys too long today, but a few things I want to throw at you before I let you go. First one is, here is a checklist of what should be on particularly incident reports. Incident reports are going to be, in my opinion, your most valuable piece of documentation that you generate because that's where you might get sued. You might have a bigger problem that happens in the future. So we want to make sure these reports are top-notch. And here is what, at a minimum, in my opinion, and I'm not an attorney, you should ask your attorney too, but here's what I would include on an incident report always. What time it is, time, date, right? Let's get that immediate timestamp. When exactly did it happen? And then along with that, where exactly did it happen? So make sure you have the time and location that they are specific. Make sure that when you're documenting any incident or anything of that nature, you're capturing facts, not opinions. We only want to write down the facts. Opinions are not really that great. We do want to log witness names and phone numbers so that we can get a hold of them if we need to in the future. But we don't want to put down opinions. We just want to put down facts. If there are any contributing factors that we're aware of, like the floor was wet or there was a fight over something, right? We want to record all those contributing factors. If there are any artifacts, so that could be POS receipts, that could be printouts from your camera system, that could be photos you take with your phone after the incident occurs. All of that we want to put with that incident report. We want to make sure the manager physically signs off on that incident report. Now, in general, I would like to say keep all these physical, but you can scan them in and keep them digital. I like to keep things physical probably for the first year, just because that's going to be when you're probably going to have to refer to it, and then you can move it to digital. Now, here's the thing, because before I let you go, I want to touch briefly on how to store all this stuff. And so keep it physical for at least a year, in my opinion, and then you can move it to digital. Just scan it into a computer. Take a picture of it however you want to do that. Use an OCR. But make sure anything that has a signature on it, you actually have a picture of the signature or you've scanned it in, right? So that signature's there in a digital format. We want to keep all of this documentation pretty much 7 years. I know that's a long time, but that's between IRS stuff and legal stuff, 7 years is about right. With training logs, some of those employee specific items and some of the vendor specific items, we could easily say the duration of the time you're engaged with that person or organization, plus 3 years. But I would just put this stuff all in a folder. I would organize it in my filing cabinet by year and then organize it by type. And I would just take the stuff from 7 years ago, shred that, burn that, however you want to get rid of it. And then it just kind of magically rotates itself, right? And so I didn't worry about anything except keep everything 7 years and then destroy. Make sure, however you store it, though, that you have restricted access. So both in a physical sense and in a digital sense, you should restrict who has access to these items because they absolutely contain personal information and information that you do not want to let out to the public. If you have any questions on how to establish this for your bar, as always, feel free to reach out. It's really not that hard. But the real point I'm trying to drive home today and make sure you guys all understand is that yes, documentation sucks. Yes, it's not something we want to do. However, it is very important, and it's what will protect your ass and keep you covered after something bad happened. That about wraps it up for today. If you enjoyed today's insights, make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a review. If you are ready to take your bar to the next level, schedule a strategy session with me by clicking the link in the show notes below. Until next time, have a great day, and we will talk again later.